Ladies and gentlemen, Rex, and this is what did Kaiser Wilhelm do after his abdication? Short animated documentary by the channel History Matters. Ooh, this is a really interesting video. I clicked on it as soon as I saw it in a recommended feed. Yeah, I mean, after World War One, right? I mean, the last Kaiser, the guy who basically got screwed by, let's just say, after watching the extra history series on it, incompetence of Austria, I guess, and his own ego that he's gonna win by all by himself, right? Because let's be honest, in World War One, Germany was kind of by themselves, right? And I like how extra history was just showing that kind of animation where he just went to vacation with the tube and things like he's gonna go into ocean or something. That's so fucking hilarious. But yeah, Kaiser Wilhelm. Nobody talks about this. Like, okay, World War One ended, right? Then Weimar Republic came, but what happened to the Kaiser? What happened to the Ottomans' last Sultan, right? Where did he go? I don't know if there is a video about Ottoman Sultan or something like that, but yeah, this is going to be interesting one about the Kaiser Wilhelm. Yeah, the first top comment is, I've read that and it's interesting that I was born near Dun, the place where Kaiser Wilhelm lived since 1919. My grandma told me that Wilhelm was a kind of a mysterious man, almost legendary. They were told something like, in their house there lives a man who was once very powerful, but he wanted to have more power, so he tried to conquer Russia, France and Belgium, but he failed, and now he's living here with us. So the children became obsessed by these stories, of course, so they came by his house often. It's like, in that house there's a ghost living there or something like that, something mysterious, right? So I guess Kaiser Wilhelm became the ghost of this town. The children were just sneaking on the house to see what's happening. So they came by his house often to look from a distance, but all they saw was an old man chopping wood. God, that's depressing, right? You being a Kaiser of a really powerful Germany, which it was before World War One, right? It was a scientific hub, basically. Having that kind of Germany, being the leader, Kaiser of that Germany, from going to the World War One, losing, and basically, going somewhere as an old man and just chopping wood until end of your times. That's just fucked up. But yeah, let's do this one. Remember, if you like my reacts and don't forget to subscribe, so I know which type of videos to react tomorrow. I don't quite a few History Matters video. If you haven't seen them, check out the link in the description. There you'll find it. There's a playlist too with history, with all my historical videos. And yeah, that's what it is.
Wilhelm Hohenzollern, the former Kaiser Wilhelm II, died in the Netherlands in 1941. He had abdicated the throne in 1918, just prior to the end of the First World War, and fled from Belgium. Which raises the question, what was he doing during those 21 years? Why did he pick the Netherlands to flee to, and how did he feel about Germany during his time there? Well, to answer the first question, the reason why Wilhelm picked the Netherlands was simple. He couldn't go anywhere else. Since Germany was, in late 1918, falling apart with socialist revolution, military revolts and popular discontent gripping the country. His abdication had happened in the town of Spa in Belgium, and so he had few options. Travel to the west and hand himself over to the Allies, who likely weren't going to be too kind to him, travel to another country via Germany and risk capture by the discontented groups there, or travel north to the Netherlands and hope that worked out. And of course he opted for the latter, which was quite the surprise for the sole Dutch soldier who was working that particular border crossing. After much deliberating, the Dutch granted him access. The former Kaiser...
Just one soldier at the border like, okay, I'm the Kaiser of Germany, I'm coming here to live, like what the fuck? Yeah. Okay, so obviously he's, him running away to Netherlands, I mean, it's a better decision than what happened to the Nicholas of Russia, right? I mean, that's just fucked up story, what happened to him and his entire family, how brutally they were murdered, right, by the Soviets. Yeah, that's just fucked up. So comparing that, this was like fine, right? He, ran away to there, right? At least he lived his life, for fuck's sake. That is something.
Then spent some months at Amarongen where nothing really happened, providing you ignore the time when US Army Colonel and former Tennessee Senator Luke Leyer attempted to kidnap him in early 1919.
What?
It wasn't a very good attempt, though. He and some other US soldiers went to Amarongen claiming to be diplomats who wanted to speak to the former Kaiser. Wilhelm said no, and so they left. With all that drama out the way, the Kaiser soon purchased a villa at Dawn, whilst importing...
What they thought is gonna happen, like one of those A-Team and some movies like that, one of those action movies where they go to a foreign country, a few soldiers, few mercenaries, whatever, extract whatever target and just takes a helicopter, gun shooting, just run away. Did they thought that's gonna happen? Because as soon as they would have taken, Kaiser there, the local authorities would be like, okay, he's taking Kaiser, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what, Kaiser Wilhelm is not some guy, right? I mean, local authorities would be like, holy shit, if we giving him, whatever you call it, right? If we allowed him to live here, right, and then somebody just take him, snatches him away from here, that's bad on our image. So I'm pretty sure the local soldiers and authorities would have stepped in. So what did they thought? How are they going to kidnap him?
Constantly not knowing what was going to happen to him. You see, the Entente were putting a great deal of pressure on the Netherlands to extradite the former Kaiser to stand trial. The Dutch said no because they were a sovereign nation which had opted to grant him asylum, and they didn't want to diminish that. In the end, Allied disagreements, more pressing international matters, and simply time meant that the calls for Wilhelm's extradition simply petered out. After this, Wilhelm settled into his new life in the Netherlands, and it wasn't long after that his wife, the former Empress Augusta, died. He got married again shortly afterwards and took to justifying his previous actions as German Kaiser. He spent the next decade and a half decrying the new Weimar Republic and blaming weak ministers and the Jews for his downfall. He was also patiently waiting for the day that the German people would inevitably realise this and invite him back to rule again. Wilhelm maintained conservative and monarchist contacts in Germany throughout the 1920s, most of whom, like the National Socialists and their mustachioed leader, he didn't care for. His attitude towards them softened in the early 1930s when they started to win many votes, and Wilhelm met with Hermann Göring twice to discuss the idea of restoration. But of course, Hitler wasn't interested in sharing power or restoring the monarchy, which is why after he secured power, he banned all monarchist societies.
I like how Kaiser, like, this idiots at the Weimar Republic, they are going to fail, and my loyal subjects will realize that they need their Kaiser again. And then he hears a faint screaming in the distance and crowd cheering, and just look at what the fuck is that, and see the Hitler basically screaming with speeches and shit like this son of a
At this point, it became pretty clear that Wilhelm wasn't going to get his throne back, and his hatred for Hitler grew and grew. The feeling was mutual, and the Nazi Party outlawed any monarchist symbols, and Hitler publicly decried the old monarchy as having brought Germany to ruin. Not because Wilhelm shouldn't have started the war in the first place, but because Hitler thought that he should have refused to surrender under any circumstances. For God's sake. This mutual disdain continued up until the annexation of Austria, which the Kaiser approved of, and the conquest of Poland. When, in 1940, the Netherlands was invaded by the Wehrmacht, Wilhelm was left well alone, and no one from the German military bothered him. He had actually been offered asylum in Britain by Winston Churchill, but he refused to accept it, preferring to remain in his new home and accept his fate there. Wilhelm also congratulated Hitler after the fall of France, something which he considered to be revenge for 1918. Kaiser Wilhelm was getting old at this point and was becoming unwell. He died in 1941, and Hitler at first wanted him to be returned to Germany to be buried in a ceremony which implied that Hitler had been appointed his successor. Although Wilhelm had written in his will...
That's why Hitler left him alone after the invasion, right? Why Kaiser wasn't touched. In Russia with Nicholas Tsar, basically, Soviets needed to show that past is destroyed. This is the new communist revolution. That's not the case with Hitler. He basically needed him to, acknowledge that I'm his successor or whatever, basically. That's why he left him alone.
That he did not wish to be buried in Germany until the monarchy had been restored there, which interestingly is something that the Nazis respected, and he was buried at his home in Dorn. Ultimately, Wilhelm would never get the recall to the throne that he always believed he would. Monarchism in Germany never recovered after the mid-1930s, and Wilhelm spent the last decades of his life in semi-seclusion, not as a member of royalty, but simply as Mr. Hohenzollern. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching. With extra thanks to these patrons.
Look, man, I'm just gonna say this, right? And obviously people will have a different view. Germany was fucking thriving power before World War I. Scientific hub, every hub, this and that, just put hub behind every word, and that was Germany. And after, getting into this kind of a weird conflict, right, where they could have played, easy and just, ease the tension, rather than, obviously, they needed excuse to go to war. Kaiser Wilhelm needed excuse to go to war. He went to war and lost terribly. Right, at a point that Germany collapsed really badly. Like, everybody was fighting for fucking bread. Weimar Republic just with disaster basically. So he took one of the best powers of the world and turned it into what was left after World War I. Right? I mean, after that, I mean, it's just fucked up, man. Right? That's a colossal failure if I ever seen one. By obviously Kaiser Wilhelm, because he was the leader of it, right? He could have handled lots of things much better. He could have eased tension with Austria rather than telling them just go to war quickly, which basically he was trying to do, which Austria didn't do, obviously. But yeah. Alright, well, that was what did Kaiser Wilhelm do after his abdication. Much history matters. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time.